Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Giannetti, Editor-in-Chief of Homepage News, and welcome to another episode of Truth on Trend, a special series featuring the home and housewares industry's most influential trend experts, examining the real story behind today's most compelling trend developments and opportunities. I'm joined again by my Truth on Trend co-host, Tom Mirabile, founder of Springboard Futures and trend forecaster for Homepage News and the International Housewares Association. Our guest today is Nancy Fire of Nancy Fire Designs. Nancy is a pioneering authority on sustainable design for the home and housewares business. She and Tom will reveal the keys to developing and marketing authentic, sustainable design, or as Nancy often classifies it, mindful design, for today's environmentally conscious marketplace. Nancy, welcome to Truth on Trend. Tom, it's great to see you again. Let's get started with you, Nancy, on I think a key question.
Okay.
The word sustainable is sort of out there, been out there for several years, but I think it's important as we kind of move into the next phase of this trend and its sphere of influence to clarify sort of the meaning of a term sustainable and sustainable intent. Can you help us sort of frame this conversation today by helping us understand how to use that word sustainable? And maybe there's other words we can get into as we kind of talk about this whole trend.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Sustainable is not a negative word. And it's funny because that's the word that brought everyone's attention to what's happening today. So when you're sustainable, it's a method of harvesting, really. It's a method of supporting a process, right? I like to say mindful design because when it's mindful, you're tending toward awareness and appreciation. So I think today people are living in a space where they want to be more mindful because their whole lifestyle is about appreciating and bringing things forward and better for the environment. When you think about circularity and intent and responsibility, they all say the same thing, because when you have the intent for something, it's really the purpose, you're determining a goal, right? Circularity, which people talk about, cradle to cradle for product, that's an important word, but basically it's really a situation with the effect leading back to the cause, which is very important. When you think of responsibility, you're really answering, you're accountable for something. So sustainability is I would say, is the overarching word. But I like to look at it more impactful by saying mindful design, because mindful design to me is awareness and appreciation. And I feel, especially after the pandemic, we're all aware and we all appreciate our environment inside and out.
Yeah, it's funny. I see the word sustainable as a very relevant, almost a B2B word. The businesses kind of hear the word sustainable and sort of get it, but I'm not sure the consumer is thinking in terms of the word sustainable as much as they're thinking in terms of how this benefits the environment, how this affects their point of view. And Tom, you like to think of the word responsibility as being critical.
I like the word responsible. I mean, I think that it also, as Nancy said, speaks to intent. I think sustainable, it started out because certain habits weren't sustainable. Sustainable meaning they can't continue. We're running out of resources, so this is not a sustainable process. And somehow we've morphed that into this all-encompassing word that is associated with, green, but if you drive it back, responsible is a word that means a lot and everybody understands it. It's like every time you say the word responsible, you do something with intent. As Nancy said, you buy a product, you're responsible. You use a product, you're responsible.
And you're accountable, which I think
accountable is another thing.
Be accountable going forward today for what you do and bring to the environment, right?
Yeah,
right.
It's very
important.
Terms have become very expansive and very dimensional. And what I love about it, intent and the word mindful is something that it shows you how these behaviors have become integrated, because we think about it becomes a part of our life. Like we talk about being mindful about what we eat, being mindful about living in the moment, being mindful and meditation, and all of these. It just shows you so much use of that word mindful is showing us how important this is to consumers.
Right. And I absolutely agree. And I just think it's really mindful lifestyle. And that's where we are today, which is very important. I think you said something yesterday, Tom, that really struck a note with me. You said the way to be, the way that was, and I think today the way to be is very mindful about being sustainable. You
Mhm.
know, the way that it isn't is what we've done in the past. So I wanted to say that I just love what you said, because I love the way to be the way that was. So thank you.
Yeah.
Nancy, is there, you use mindful, and I'd like you to kind of get a little deeper into that. And, that does not necessarily only include sustainability. And as Tom alluded to, there are other elements to mindful design. Is sustainability kind of still high, or the idea of environmentally responsible design still very high in the minds of consumers right now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it all starts with product transparency. That's really where we want to be today. And that really is, it's truly the practice of disclosing detailed information. And what is that information? It's about products and services, including what they contain, how they were produced, and where they come from. Are they carefully sourced? Sustainable factory awareness. I mean, artisan credit. I mean, people are truly, if you aren't transparent today, you will lose business. Look at artisan credit. People are going to be like, how is that sustainable? You're sustaining a history. You're sustaining a culture of doing something in a way that if you don't sustain it, will not be there any longer. So there are so many ways and so many layers of saying that something's sustainable or mindful. But I would say product traceability is just so important today. Product transparency.
Well,
Transparency, yeah, I agree. I think that we're seeing a lot of Springboard did a survey, and one of the things that we asked people about was how important was trust when it comes to choosing a retailer or a brand when you're choosing home and housewares products. 97% of people said that it was essential to their purchase choice. So, and trust is a part of, if you aren't transparent, you lose trust. I think
Yes.
Mintel did a report, the 2022 Global Consumer Trends Report, and it's brilliant. They just released it a little while ago, but they said one of the key consumer trends right now is what they call ethics check, and it's
Love
that
it.
consumers are demanding. Their expectations of brands and ethical commitments are evolving, and they've moved beyond just wanting brands to be ethical and demanding to see measurable, transparent, consistent actions. I love the way they put that. Measurable, transparent, consistent action. But also the next gen of this is that businesses are expected to be transparent about their weaknesses as well.
Yes.
And how they're addressing those. Like you look at Levi Strauss, they know they use too much water in processing cotton. So their objective is to use 30% less water when they haven't figured it out yet, but that's what their attempt is. So yeah, that's really important to what we do.
I don't think the consumer is demanding that companies are 100% completely in on this whole idea of sustainability and mindful design. They want to see some evidence of it, but they also are going to respond to a company or a message that, like you said, says we still have some work to do.
Well, Nancy said something yesterday, and not to throw back a compliment at you, but she said there's no excuse today for not doing something. Everybody can, there's something can be done by everyone, no matter where you are.
Absolutely. And people have said, instead of being 100% sustainable, we'd rather, because it's almost impossible to do that, we'd rather see what you're doing to get to that. So if you're not sustainable, you're hearing about greenwashing, right? And there's a backlash, because then social media comes out and, they really talk poorly about that company, and they're called out on, bad labeling or bad packaging or greenwashing for something they're not doing. So there are lawsuits that are happening now too, because people are getting very aware of when a company isn't telling the truth. So that's what I love when you said that. Look, companies are reaching out now with surveys, and they're actually saying, hey, how can I make our product better? What do you think? And they're getting advice from their consumer, which is so smart, because that's inclusion. And that's what people are looking for. They want to be included on their product choices. So I think it's fabulous, really.
Well, it really starts with the consumer. The message of sustainability doesn't sort of start and stop on the box or on that first page of the website.
Absolutely.
There's so much talk about companies telling stories about their brands. And some of that story of sustainability is directly embedded into the product, but there is so much more that may be embedded into process, into how you operate your facilities, and end of life, what you do what you can do to help consumers at the end of the life. The consumer has access to more information. You mentioned social media. So this is really there's no shortcuts anymore to not just being sustainable, but communicating the level of that sustainability.
It's the storytelling part of it. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I think people
You
really
also
want to hear
identified
that.
something, Nancy's mentioned circularity and cradle to cradle, and you just mentioned something that's looking at different parts of the process. That is super important because sometimes we can't make a difference, say, in the packaging or in, no consumer expects you, as you said, to go end to end and fix everything, but you do have to look at every part of the process and determine where can I make the greatest impact. And that's one of the things that Nancy Fire Designs does, right? You consult with companies
Yes.
and help them find the low-hanging fruit in terms of this is your process and this is where we can make the biggest
Yes.
difference, whether so
But
that's
and it's done in baby steps, because this is something you don't do overnight, but you also want to gain the trust of your consumer. So by doing that, you don't want to greenwash, because if you put it out there, this is what we're doing, you kind of look foolish. So what you do is you share each step of the way, and then your consumer begins to be part of that story. And once they're part of that story, you have their trust. And once you have their trust, you're transparent. So it really works back. I mean, you said it yesterday, Tom, where if you're a manufacturer, you have to really look to your factories to understand and make sure that they're being sustainable, that they're being mindful. If you're a retailer, you have to make sure that that manufacturer is checking their boxes. And if you're working with a retailer, you have to make sure that that retailer is truly doing what they're saying they're doing in their stores. So I think it's like we all check each other in this sort of sustainability world. And it all comes down to just being more mindful, really.
It's a really big shift, though, what you're just talking about, because it used to be, as retailers and as manufacturers, we would kind of either wait for people to come to us who had more responsible processes and sourcing, or we would go out looking for somebody new who
Right.
does. Now, if we have somebody that we like doing business with, or if we retailers and suppliers, both of them pressure their sources. So as a retailer, you go and you say to your favorite vendor, what are you doing? Because if you're not doing anything, I can't
Yeah.
continue this relationship.
Right.
Well, look at IKEA. So I went and spoke to them about 7 years ago with HDTV, and I gave them my trend presentation, and we did touch upon sustainability. And they mentioned this was something that was very important to them. But I'm reading now by 2030, they're committed to using only renewable and recycled materials to reduce the total IKEA climate footprint by an average of 70% per product. That's incredible. So, I mean, you want to look to a retailer who basically believes that this story needs to move forward. They're not going to work with any manufacturer that isn't doing anything correct along their guidelines, which I think is phenomenal. I mean,
and when you live there, you can get the partnership of the people walking in the door and saying, look, this is how we're getting to 70%. Share, like IKEA, if you use Zipcar instead of owning a car, they will give, free parking, guaranteed spaces, all this other stuff. So it's every part. It's the world of the process, it's the intent in every action.
absolutely. It's the intent, and it's also the sharing. So when you go online to many of these companies, so there are a ton of companies today that are doing really good. Like if you go into Joybird, right? Joybird will tell you what charities they're donating money to, that they are using recycled wood, and they're reusing content. Their fabrics are really good content related back to sustainability. So they're reused, recycled. So I'm just saying, and then they tell you their story. There are 15 other companies doing the same thing each day that are new, because that is the sustainable trend going forward. That is the mindful way of working, which again, I feel is fantastic. You just need to totally stay away from greenwashing and be very truthful. Because don't forget, accountability and pressure really equals significant change. So if we're pressuring and people are held accountable, you're going to see this change. And, I'm very optimistic, because I believe that this is, I think you said it the other day, it's like cross-generational, right, Tom? So what's happening is it's not just baby boomers. It's not just Gen Z. Gen Z might be in it, but baby boomers like me could afford to buy those products because we believe in it as well. So I just think I love that it's cross-generational. I feel like that.
And it's back and forth.
Successful.
The younger generations continuing to have an influence, even if they don't have the buying power right now, have the influence on those buying decisions for the house.
And we're supporting that because we're buying what they want. And I think that's amazing because it's what I want, but there's some products I didn't even know that could be made that way, honestly.
Right.
So yeah, I feel like it's a win-win. I mean, there's so many companies today that are mindful, that are helping to send this message in different ways. So, I mean, it's wonderful work. Every week I meet a new company that really wants to be part of this movement. And many of them are people like me that were influenced by their children. My kids are 27 and 29, and my daughter, her master's is in food policy. She's working for a company called Carbon Trust in Amsterdam, and they help you reduce your global footprint, big corporations. So, I mean, I see it. I see the magic that's happening. It's just, it's going to take a while, but we're moving in the right direction.
Do you have research that kind of talks about the cross-generational influence?
Yeah,
here?
I actually do. I actually do. But before I go there, I want to say something while it's still in my head because I'll lose it. You said something yesterday, and when we were chatting about this, and it really impressed. You said it's not being responsible is not just it's not a competitive advantage, it's a competitive mandate. And I thought, that's so true. I mean, it's so true. I think some companies still think of it as like, if we do this, we'll have a leg up. And that's not the case. You have to. It's a way to be. We did research. Springboard did research in our consumer value equation index. And one of the things that we found was that, so on the whole, 87% of consumers said that when they choose a retailer, manufacturer, or brand, their position on environmental responsibility was important. 5% higher than social responsibility. So environmental is not to say social is not important, but environmental, key, okay? What's really interesting is that millennials index 5% higher than that. And they're the new money. They're, they're influencing up and they're influencing down when it comes to cross-generational, influence. So it's great. I mean, they're saying this is the only way. This is the only way.
Love it.
The issue of this mandate, this competitive mandate, in some markets overseas in Europe, there are some specified rules with regard to how sustainable messaging and development. It's still sort of the wild, wild west here in the United States. There's no identified rules, but these rules are sort of being written as we progress right now. They're just not kind of formalized. And at some point, how do you sort through, where to start in the process of understanding sustainable practice? I mean, is there sort of this checklist that you have to go through just to get rolling in this business, Nancy?
Yeah, there's definitely a checklist, but it really depends on your product. Are you doing fabric? Are you doing soft goods? Are you doing hard goods? Are you doing mixed materials? Every product, every substrate has a different requirement. And the problem is, it is like the Wild West here. I just spoke to the Danish consulate on recycling, and in Denmark, it's governed. I mean, they cannot produce a product without having certain elements for their businesses. For us here, it's a little difficult. So when I work with a client, it's specific to what they're doing. If it's textile, are they doing cotton? Cotton takes a lot of water. Are you better off working with hemp or bamboo? Can you get those substrates? Where can you get those? How much will it cost to import that? So it's a really it's a tough puzzle, but we take it slow. So it really depends on the substrates, if that helps, because each substrate will have its own category.
Got it.
Yeah, but like who I've been working with, it's the bcorporation.net. And the B Corp, they certify you. So if you're a mindful company working the way you should, you will have their logo on your packaging, at your showrooms, in your factories. But your factories have to be as mindful as well, because if the chain is broken, then you're not mindful, you're not sustainable. So it's a lengthy process, but it's the only process to do going forward, because in 5 years, if you're not mindful, if you're not sustainable, if you're not environmentally pro, you will lose business, because
Yeah,
that is the
the
direction.
train's
they're
going to
going.
leave the station, and you better be on it when it leaves. the station.
Absolutely.
Well, and B Corps are like, B Corps are they're the best possible way to go.
Yes.
But I will say that the standards are extremely high, and some people can't hit those standards to become a B Corp. But the other thing, I think our industry has always been an industry, home and housewares in particular, is an industry of big brands.
Yes.
Right. And I think that one of the responsibilities of being a leader is to lead. So big brands should be putting a stake in the ground about, this is the difference we're going to make. I won't even
Like
name
IKEA.
names, but and that's for the retail side, but for the manufacturing side, because if you're a leader and you take a stand and you make a choice to make better, people will follow you because they have no choice.
Well,
It's just like a trend, except this is
look
more
at the
important.
Phillips collection, right? So I go to High Point twice a year, and I'll always shop the Phillips collection. But you know what? They are like the grandfathers of sustainability, because for years, Mark and Jason have been going overseas. They had been replanting. They make beautiful consoles out of champsha wood that basically are roots that are rotting in the jungle. And they rebuilt, factories. I mean, everything they do follows that process. So there are so many companies now at High Point that are similar, which I'm very excited about, because they too are taking that stand. It's not an easy one to take, but I could see Phillips, I could just see how busy they are and how many designers, designers are really looking to walk in a showroom and say, what is sustainable here? What is your sustainable footprint? And what can I buy? Some showrooms that I'm working with, they're only going to have sustainable sections. So when a designer walks in, they could help themselves. They don't have to ask.
And some companies are buying other brands. Some companies are buying smaller brands to shore them up, and also
Absolutely.
to
that point, Tom, you mentioned how the big companies have to lead, but often it is startups and smaller companies that end up being the disruptors along the way, that ultimately could become bigger as they take share. If this becomes a
Peter, a great example of that in home and housewares in particular is, so our industry, many industries are built on selling more, getting people to buy more, to want more. But conscious consumption is about using less, keeping it longer. When you look at the top two in the consumer value index, the top two things that define value for housewares consumer this year were durability and quality. Both of those speak to owning something longer, and so we've got to get out of the headset of, I'm going to sell them a 100-piece set, 102-piece flatware set, or a 16-piece cookware set, and 8 steak knives, which vegans really don't care about. And it's like, but you look at disruptors in the cookware industry are direct to consumers, because they listen to consumers, and their sets are generally smaller, lower SKU count, more aluminum, more US manufacture, all of those things. None of them are easy. None of them are easy. But
well, you know what? I have to say, I'm definitely seeing a change in the houseware industry. It's happening slowly. I was just reviewing, there was a cookware pan where there's copper in the center, and it's layered, it's 5 layers. And what they're doing is, the copper is important for your cooking, but what it does, it preserves the pan. So that pan will last a lifetime, and there's a lifetime guarantee for that. So every day I'm reading about a new product that's coming out, because people are mindful enough to pay attention and maybe pay more money to get a mold that is going to be right for them for the future. So if you're a big organization, you have the money to do that.
I'm working with the Cookware and Bakeware Alliance, and we're working on a program to create a recycling chain for cookware, because people, I know it sounds ridiculous, but people think, oh, it's metal. If it goes in a landfill, well, that's where metal comes from anyway. I mean, the process of making, making cookware, making flatware, polishing compounds, it's really bad for water. It uses a ton of water. It's really just dirty. And this way, it's like you've got these pure metals that just have to be sorted, resmelted, and all of this. And we're trying to figure out a way to do that, and to engage retailers and manufacturers in moving products, keeping the steel.
No different than 10 years ago when people started recycling plastic bottles. What are we going to do with these? So look at all the products that are now made from plastic. I mean, you
And
have.
then that evolved into using the same bottles. So it's like that created an
Absolutely.
entire new enormous business in
It's a whole
hydration,
new industry,
you know?
a very successful industry.
It is interesting. You mentioned lifetime warranties. What that meant to the consumer 15 years ago in terms of adding value
Right.
to a purchase might mean something a little different
Right.
in
Does. That's a
2021,
great point,
22
Peter.
going
Yeah.
forward. And it all helps sell the product, but the motivation behind it. I want to thank Nancy Fire,
Thank you.
Nancy Fire Design, Tom Mirabile, Springboard Futures. I think
Thanks.
they've given us something to be mindful of as we explore this issue of sustainability going forward. It doesn't stop here. We'll be talking about it a lot more in the future.
Fantastic.
For everyone else, I'm Peter Giannetti at Homepage News. We will see you next time on Truth on Trend. Thanks again, everyone. Bye-bye.